I shared a post that had gone viral about banning Kellogg's because they put different ingredients in our products than they do in the same products in other countries. Well, I had a few people in my DMs telling me that this was misinformation being shared all over the internet, blah, blah, blah. So, I'm here to talk about why I shared it and that it doesn't matter if it's misinformation or whatever they want to tell us. The reason why I shared it was because I am totally fine with everyone banning these products because there's no nutritional value in them whatsoever. As a certified fitness coach and certified nutritionist, I would never recommend my clients eat any of those. I personally have had a lot of issues with my gut. I've had a bad gut health, gluten allergy, I have dairy issues, bloating and inflammation after every single meal. I've had where in the morning I'm super skinny and then in the nighttime I look like I'm pregnant. Like, it's so bad. I'm going to tell y'all what I would recommend staying away from when it comes to anything in foods, and that number one thing is going to be seed oils, which is in a lot. I would recommend switching your dairy products over from things that don't have any seed oils in them and avoiding eating out, which sounds crazy and oh, it's impossible. It's not. I rarely eat out and I feel so much better just because you really don't know what they're cooking the foods in or where they're getting the foods from. What are seed oils? Well, you've got your, obvious ones, grapeseed oil, rapeseed oil, and cottonseed oil. And then you've got some that maybe people aren't as aware of, which is canola oil, there's sunflower, safflower oils, soybean oil, corn oil. And everything I'm sharing, you can literally Google and find. So grass-fed butter is going to be lower on the fat toxicity scale, and that's actually what I use for my foods, and I don't have any dairy issues anymore since I've switched to a grass-fed butter and grass-fed cheese. Next thing I'm going to talk about is cellulose. So cellulose is actually in a lot of breads and flours and shredded cheese, among other things, which is why I personally shred my own cheese now. But I was like, oh, good, I can find gluten-free bread and it's better for you, it's clean. No, it's not. You have to look at everything else that they're putting in it. So this I found off of Google. You can look it up yourself. So cellulose in processed foods, they use to prevent caking. It is usually wood pulp or cotton lint, and they use it as a thickener in sauces. They say it's generally safe in moderation. If you see anything that's generally safe in moderation, that's up to you. But I personally, if there's anything that's like, oh, this is okay in small doses or in moderation, that might be true, maybe. I don't have a lot of research on that, but over time. Next thing I'm going to talk about is added sugars and artificial sweeteners. So added sugars, I have been using coconut sugar in place of regular table sugar or even cane sugar, just because I feel like it's a healthier alternative. I was doing like sugar-free candy and stuff when I was wanting candy or whatever, which I don't do that anymore. But the point is, I thought that artificial sweeteners were better for you, and a lot of times, or most times, they are not. So I haven't fully done research on stevia, but I've heard that one's a little bit better, but there's the ones like sucralose and things that are not great. So watch the added sugars and artificial sweeteners. That's another thing that I really look at in foods. Also, just staying away from processed foods. So I switched to whole foods, so I'll get into what to eat with that. But just processed foods are so bad for you, and they just have so many things in them that are not necessary, and our bodies can't digest them. Our bodies are not meant to be able to digest wood pulp and cotton lint and all these synthetic things that we're now putting in foods that really are not necessary. And that's why we have the higher obesity in our country versus others, is because if you look at the ingredients we put in our foods versus other countries, they're different. 90% of the time they're different. They're adding stuff in our foods that we just don't need and we literally can't process. So it's just sitting in our body, and that is where the bloating comes from, the inflammation comes from, and the fat just holding it into our bodies. It's actually really gross if you think about it. Food colorings is another one, because not only does it do stuff physically to us, but it also affects us behaviorally. Like, there's studies on these things, and we just still give our kids all these food dyes. Every time I see food dyes, I'm like, why? Like, you could get a lot of colors from fruits. People use beet coloring for purples or pinks. Yellow rice that I used to buy had yellow 6, and now I make my own with turmeric, and it makes it even more yellow, and it's actually really pretty, and it tastes better. Okay, now let's talk about what to eat. So, like I said, a lot of these bread flours and things, if you're trying to make your own, might have cellulose and a few other things in them. So one of the brands that I personally use that I have found to be cleaner is, I believe it's called Bob's Red Mill. So I use that for like my baking powder, my baking soda, my flour. I think there's a few other things that I have in the pantry with that brand, but that one's a pretty clean one that I've found just in the grocery store. Maybe one day I'll be able to like mill my own flour and all that, but that's a lot of work. And then I just cook my own dinners, and I use, so what I will say when it comes to proteins, I always, with my chicken, make sure that it is organic chicken. And I try to do like pasture raised for the chicken. When it comes to beef, because I try to avoid pork completely, when it comes to beef, I always make sure that it is grass-fed. That includes my dairy, so my butter and my milk is going to be grass-fed as well. And then eggs, also organic, pasture-raised. Fruits and veggies, I usually will try to do organic. I know there's some controversy going around about organic, but I still feel like it's a better alternative with less potential pesticides and such. I'm actually working on growing my own garden now, but until I've got that up and going and actually giving me things, I'm just still buying organic and then making sure that I wash them and have them in a veggie wash with water and vinegar. Also, what I recommend is getting an app to look up the ingredients. Apps will tell you, so I use the Bobby approved app because you just scan it in the store and he'll tell you exactly what in it is bad, and then it'll also give you recommendations on something in its place to substitute it with. If you're skeptical about using an app, I just recommend looking up the ingredients yourself to see what they are exactly and how safe they are, because it'll even tell you like, oh, this is fine if it was organic or something like that, or just this is really bad, because it'll tell you what cellulose is, for example. It'll say wood pulp, whatever. So that's why I started looking it up myself, because I was like, interesting, there's wood pulp in my cheese. So I was like, let me just see, myself, do my research. And sure enough, literally Google tells you. Google tells us, Safari or whatever, what is in our foods, and we still just eat it. So I personally suggest doing your own research and then deciding on where you want to go from there.